We've really helped and contributed to a lot of positive outcomes for customers who are victims of cyber attacks, need to recover from cyber attack, just looking for a place where they can walk into the UBX house and open the door and they're like, I'm safe.
Hello and welcome to episode 80 of Great Things with Great Tech, the podcast highlighting companies doing great things with great technology. My name's Anthony Spiteri, and in this episode we're exploring the journey of a cloud service provider innovator that transformed a childhood fascination with computers into a mission-driven venture. This tale begins in a Detroit basement loaded with servers and evolves into a global entity leveraging cloud technology for operational excellence for their customers. That company is UBX Cloud. Joining me is Stephen Panovski, president and co-founder of UBX Cloud. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I really appreciate being here. It's quite an honor, actually.
Thanks very much. And before we get into, I love what we're going to talk about. We were in the pre-show and I'm really excited about your story, talking about UBX Cloud, but also just talking about some really important trends in the industry at this point in service provider land. So before that though, if you like great things with great tech and would like to feature in future episodes, you can click on the link on the show notes or go to GTwGT.com, head there and view all the episodes, or you can go to YouTube, hit the link and subscribe button, the like and subscribe button even, or go to the podcast platform of your choice, Apple, Google, Spotify, all hosted and distributed by Spotify Podcasts. All right, Stephen, with that, let's get into it. And again, like I mentioned to you in the pre-show, I'm excited to get back to the roots of the show, which is service providers. It's been a while since I've had a service provider on the show. This is why the show exists. Service providers doing great things with great technology. It's what I love talking about, right? So before we get into UBX Cloud though, give me and give the listeners a little bit of a background on yourself and how, you know, you're self-confessed geek. I think it's pretty obvious to sort of see. I love that because, you know, so am I. And it's great in the space. But give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you became to start UBX Cloud with a friend of yours, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. The history is quite interesting. I always seem to fall into things, right? So in 1996, I myself and a childhood friend just kind of developed a love affair with all of technology as much as we could get. On Packard Bells, actually. This is one of the Packard Bells that we first
look at
started
that. That's awesome.
journey with. Yeah. And we just loved everything about it. I mean, we couldn't get enough of it. We would meet up on weekends at church, and every time we would have a new story or a new thing that we read and we wanted to share with. And that was like cemented the friendship between me and Igor. We were childhood friends. We're both Macedonians, first generation, growing up in the States. And this is like all new frontier stuff. Like we were wanting to learn as much as possible. Internet wasn't really a thing. BBSs, bulletin board systems, were probably the gateway to the internet for us. You know, it was like what started it all. And with me and Igor, it was Packard Bell and learning as much as we could. And we wanted to learn about Microsoft products. You know, Linux was like pretty new. We wanted to learn about Linux, so we started, building out a home lab, and we had systems and hardware that was donated by some of our friends and their parents who were working at like General Motors, EDS.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we had, we were like, yeah, give us all of it, and like we will learn from it. And he and I, our minds are just very different, but we both kind of put that together and just made something awesome with it. I remember, interestingly enough, I actually come from a restaurant family. So my family is almost 3 generations in the restaurant business.
Okay.
And they brought a lot of the specialty cooking and the recipes from Macedonia, which is very similar to Polish food.
I'm a big fan of that type of cuisine for sure, without question. Yeah.
So we brought that. My grandfather brought that in, and they've had a successful restaurant business in the greater Detroit area and multiple locations and everything. And I worked the family business, but I was like, when I came home to that Packard Bell, or when I looked at that thing and I walked into a data center, I'm like, this is what I want to do. there was a customer at the restaurant that was like, hey, he's like, you like computers? And I'm like, yeah. And he was a regular. And this was back in the day when you could smoke. And, there was a line of smokers in the front and they're all smoking and drinking their coffee. And he had like a trench coat. He worked for a local ISP. And he's like, you
Whoa.
like computers? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, come with me. He's like, I'm going to show you where all the computers are. And I'm
It's
looking at my mom. I'm like, can I go?
Yeah, that's
Right.
pretty interesting. Like I would have thought maybe, is this guy a little bit dodgy, like trench guy
Yeah.
asking a kid or kid, like to go with him?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
I thought about that too. I like in retrospect, I was like, you like let me go with like some random stranger, and she's like, he was a regular, he's fine.
He knew.
And
Yeah,
yeah, and he drove me to the data center. It was the facility was called BigNet. It was a local dial-up ISP,
yeah.
and he brought me in, and there was like it was like a retail counter in the front, and then there was a safe, and then they opened the safe, the vault doors, and in the vault doors were cabinets with beige servers.
I was
And
going to say, is it like the because that time it would have been potentially the ISP side potentially was going to be rows of literal modems connected up together potentially as well. Like that's what you would dial up into, right?
Yep, they were US robotics, exactly
Yeah,
what
there
you
you
just
go.
mentioned. Yep.
Yeah.
And I was like scanning the room, and the excitement never left me after that day. After that smell of the glycol in the air and seeing that data center, I was like, I want to do this
I
forever.
it's interesting you talk about that feeling, and I've just been transported back to around about the same time, 95, 96, when my mate took me to one of the first internet service providers here in Australia, in Perth, called PSINet. Never forget the name. And we went
Mhm.
in there, and I just remember the smell, the tech they had. Like it was just a different world, and they had this thing called Ethernet that was a really fast internet connection. I was like, "Well, this is amazing," So I think you and I probably had that same feel of that, and I've just got transported back in time, and it was a great feeling that kind of I know solidified my love of technology as well and the internet because it was so new and fresh back then.
Very much so. That's wonderful. And that's exactly how I felt. And I turned down a lucrative restaurant empire, right? Like sons inherit, like that's kind of the thing in our
Yeah,
culture. So it's like, I'm okay. I'm gonna do this because I really like doing this all the time. And
yeah.
that was in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So talk about how that evolved. Like obviously, and we've got the garage story happening here, but
Mhm.
you've got your origin story of the love of computer with Igor and what you guys
Yeah.
are doing. But how is that translated to setting up something that's going to become UBX Cloud in the future? What was the transition and the steps there?
Oh, yeah, good point. So I worked for back in the 90s, internet was not that common, right? It was more perceived as like almost like a luxury at that point and not accessible. So I worked at a coffee shop just north of my home, and I they was a it was a cyber cafe. So people
You were
were
going to say, I was going to say, you're
yeah,
going to say internet cafe. Yep, awesome.
yep. So it was like the two things that I love: internet, technology,
Coffee,
coffee, right?
love it.
So it was the greatest thing ever. And we worked there, and my boss, interestingly enough, like everyone on the staff's name was Steve. Like there was like five Steve there. So my boss Steve was like, "Hey, you're pretty good at Photoshop, and you're pretty good at like HTML and stuff." He's like, "Why don't you teach our web design class on Fridays?" And I was like, "Okay, like totally, I can do that." So I would teach design fundamentals and just basic HTML for constructing like personal websites and stuff. And this was around the time of like this was actually even before like GeoCities and like
Yep.
Tripod and some of those other sites. And he had a really like there was a lot of interested people. And at the end of our sessions, like we did a couple. I think there were a few weeks long on the week on Fridays. People would be like, "Hey, okay, I finished my website." We give them like the floppy disk or whatever with the HTML stuff on it, and like, okay, like where do I put this?
Yeah,
Right?
okay, I
Like,
can
where does
see. I
it
can see
go?
where this is going. I can see where this is going.
Yeah. So I actually asked my boss. I said, "Look, there's a lot of people asking. Why don't you guys like put this on your servers and stuff because they're an ISP. Like the
Mm.
Cyber Cafe actually was the local ISP there,
Wow, there you go. Okay.
and that's how they were able to serve all those internet connections at their coffee shop." And he's like, you know what? He's like, we sell dial-up minutes. That's it, and coffee. Like he's like, we don't do any kind of anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, do you mind? And he actually, I think he suggested, I think he said, well, don't you have those like servers at home? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, I do, you know. And he was totally cool with it. So we ended up just moving a lot of those customers naturally, right?
Yeah.
And it got to the point over time where it was like we got like as these technologies are evolving, their needs were evolving. So like, hey, we want email. Can you do email? And we're like, hey,
Yeah.
like, we have Linux servers and we have Sun and we have Compact back then. And I was like, yeah, we can do all of that. FTP, yeah, no problem. And it was just us learning, right? And then it kind of got to a point where like we're like looking at each other and we're like, this is like a business now because we ended up having to like our servers were like my basement looked like something out of NORAD. I mean, it was like people would see my basement and they're like, "What is this? Like,
That's
this is
so cool.
crazy."
Yeah. Do you still have
Yeah,
pictures? Do you still have pictures of those like hanging around?
you know, I'll get no. I have very few
Yeah.
pictures,
It's a
unfortunately, and it
shame,
was
right? Because it would have been cool. Like it's a cool thing to look back on and go, this is how it was versus what
yeah.
it is
a-
now.
Apparently, being the child of immigrant parents in the United States, cameras were like something that you just didn't do. They were just too expensive. Cameras and photos were expensive.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. Like we've got
Mm.
like 5 pictures of like the entire 1990s,
Isn't that
right?
interesting? Yeah.
So yeah, so it was we had I mean I remember like we couldn't afford the racks. Like Igor was like building racks out of like spare wood, right? Like
Wow.
he got like
That's so
like
good.
donated
Mm.
or he went to Home Depot and like painting them black and stuff. So he like that's just how he worked, right? His mind was just incredible.
Yeah.
And we got to a point where we're like, okay, we need to like co-locate this. So one of the things that I was doing is that at the restaurant locations, they had industrial power. They had three-phase. So I co-located some of our servers at my family's restaurants. They had good connectivity, battery backup, three-phase power. It was a nice little setup. And then I'm like, Igor was like, we need to put this in a co-location or we need to put this in a data center, like a proper data center. And that's kind of where it started. Like that was the spark.
That's
And
awesome.
our clients just kind of drove that. They pushed us and they showed us what they needed. And then we're like, yeah, we can do that, right? Or like, yeah, we
Yeah.
want to do that.
I
So
love the story. I love the evolution of just kind of being there, geeking out, but also then through just being around people that needed certain services and through the web design, it kind of evolved into, we're going to build and host out of our garage, and then it's like, well, garage, this is getting serious. Let's pull it out and put it into a data center, and then from a UBX point of view, that kind of was incorporated around 2008 timeframe.
mhm.
So what was the sort of shift that made you go, hey, now we've got to create UBX and kind of make this thing legit?
Yeah, like our goal was to like we both went to college together. We both graduated from the same university, and our paths were like very different. Like I was doing a lot of like consulting for smaller businesses and working with a lot of local managed service providers, and I was like the server backup guy or like the server dude or the rotating the tape kind of person, right? And handling that aspect of it. And Igor was just like, just rocketing into space with his virtualization specialization and
Hmm.
knowledge. So, but we both had that fundamental core and drive for like servers. Like everything that we did in the data center was exciting and fun, and we wanted to do more of that. And in 2008 was like that year where it was like, okay, we're doing this. Like sign here, right?
Yeah.
Like this is now a thing. Like it wasn't a thing, it wasn't a real thing before. Now it's a thing. So
Yeah.
and like I said, we'd already learned like we'd already known of like Citrix technologies and I think it was a Metaframe back then and
Mm.
RDS over dial-up and we were like we really like enjoyed doing those kinds of things and we knew that we didn't want to really be like an outsourced IT department. We wanted to be like the back end people, right? Like
Yeah.
the radio face, not the Tom
Yeah.
Cruise, right?
Oh,
So.
that's it. Yeah. And so what, when you started there, or just taking through the first few years of UBX, 2008 through maybe the first 5 or so years, what sort of technology stack and partners were you using back then? You mentioned, VMware or virtualization, so I'm assuming
Mhm.
VMware. But in terms of your stack, and I haven't asked this question for a while because I haven't needed to because of the different
Yeah.
types of providers. But I used to ask in the early days of the show, like, what did you build on? Like, was it Dell? Was it HP? And I was kind of interested in the stack that it was because they were all kind of, people were doing it all kind of the same, but it was slightly different, And you've mentioned that you would look at other service providers to get a bit of influence or a bit of
Yeah.
ideation, and we all kind of did that, right? So what was that stack initially, and what were you actually offering as services in those early days?
Sure. So we were very comfortable from the beginnings with HP and Compact. I mean, Compact servers were basically what we started all the x86 stuff on,
Yeah.
and that just kind of evolved, like to the point where we were on like first name basis with a lot of the HP people. I had a key fob, or not a key fob. I had some access to get a key code to get into their depot to just grab parts and leave IOUs,
How
right?
good's
Like
that?
that, it was awesome, right?
How different it was. How different it was.
How different? I mean, I'm not even joking. I would leave like a yellow like post-it note and be like, UBX owes, like this, and this, like send me the bill or whatever. And it was really great. And but we got to a point where we needed to like do more automation. We needed to kind of evolve that stack. Like in order to complete the vision that we had set out, was like, okay, we need to not necessarily use what we like, but use what's the best for what we need.
Yeah.
And we decided, I think it was like 2011, that even though I have a love affair with HP, that we really needed to go with Cisco UCS, and we needed to do these things to automate the deployments for our desktop as a service.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
back then it was like really novel and new. And like in 2008, like nobody, like we were like the niche, right?
Yep.
Like we were offering Citrix desktops to a market that had absolutely no interest in Citrix desktops, right? So the kind of customers that we got were like very unique. Like, hey, I've got a multi-site construction company. I got people connecting in. I don't want people to drive in and make like deposit their data and like do prints and stuff. So I got I we were like in that space with like those kinds of requirements.
Yep.
And we also had a lot of questions. Like people were just like, look, my cabinets are filling up with servers and I have no place of managing them, or I don't have enough power or
Perfect.
heat
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
maintain them. So
Yeah.
that was basically the building blocks and the core fundamentals of what we did. And on the stack side, we never compromised on storage. Like that was a thing. We even early on, we were EMC partners. We spent a ton of money with EMC, and uptime was awesome.
Yeah.
But the workload, the arrays were just not designed for recomposing desktops, and the kind of we
Yeah.
were
What were you running? Were you running VNXs or something a little bit
yeah.
more? Yeah. So we were VNXs as well. So and
Yeah.
they ran beautifully when they ran beautifully, but when they fell hard.
Mhm.
They were
Very, very much so.
very hard, right? They were either you got everything or you got nothing. Yeah, lot of good times, a lot of pain with them, but yeah, I know what you're talking. I knew exactly where you were heading at with that
Mhm.
sort of line of thought there. So
We needed it.
so what did you guys do to kind of get over that?
So we ended up settling on a technology that didn't really have, there wasn't actually a formal stack. It's called Flash Stack now, but that's actually what we had done back then. So a couple things. We became an ISP, like a legitimate ISP, and that was like at the time I felt like it was a little overkill. Like why are we doing this, right? But I understood later on that it was really important to maintain that supplier quality. So it was like we became an ISP. We manage our own global ASN, and we manage our own upstream peers, because we can't rely on other people to give us crappy transit, right?
Yep.
Like that was really it. It's our product, right? Like we can't compromise on that. So we became an ISP, but I like to say, like, we're not like a traditional ISP. Like we're not evil, right? Because I feel like in our profession, like telco and ISPs are like on this side of the fence, and like no one
Absolutely.
on that side of the fence.
Absolutely.
Um,
They're network guys. Yeah. Let's just leave it at that.
yeah,
Without insulting them too much.
yeah. I mean, no. I mean, I think that just the industry is just very different. Like,
Yeah, that's it as well.
yeah, they're like dog eat dog. Like they're just not
Yes.
our kind of people.
No.
So it was like, okay, we need to control the supply chain, and we did that. And on the storage side, we were actually the first company to buy Pure Storage. We were like, take our money, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
I went through all the couches and I got like this huge amount of money, and we're gonna buy all flash. And
That's cool.
we were their first customer. We were their first customer in Michigan. They quote unquote popped their cherry on UBX, which I thought
There
was
you
really
go.
cute. Um, Yeah, and
That's very pure storage as well, by the way, to actually say something like that in the early days.
very, very, very much pure storage. But you know what? Those guys are amazing. I mean, like really, it was like, look, we put all of our VDI workload and all of our mixed IO workload on there, and I'm like, dude, it just works. Like this is like we don't have to do anything. Like it's doing its thing, right?
Yeah.
And people were like calling us up and they're like, something's wrong. We're like, what do you mean? It's running too fast. These aging reports that take like like 4 or 5 days are coming up in like in one day.
Yeah.
And
What
we're
have you
like,
done? What have you done?
yeah, yeah, we migrated you over to Pure. Like all of our existing customers, we made a decision, and I thought this was really cool of us. We're like, hey, we're not going to charge you for this. We're moving you to this storage,
That's
right?
cool. Yeah.
And any new, net new customers, then obviously we would change the pricing structure a bit, but
Yeah.
we gave the ones that were with us from the beginning like the benefit of that, and I like that. Like we were able
Yeah.
to do that.
And
I was
Pure,
also
Pure's been amazing, right? Like I actually pocked Pure as well in Australia, and just some things didn't quite work out, but I saw the brilliance of it, right, and what it offered. And if we could have, I think we would have, but we were just too far invested in other technologies and partnerships at the time, and just couldn't make it work. And when you look at where Pure's journey and where they are today, I mean, they're at the top of their game today, even more so than what they were, right? So it's like we're talking about a journey of now 10 plus years for them, but they're still stronger than ever. And I think it's because of the foundations of what they did. It was so different, but other people were trying to do what they did, but they just executed on it perfectly. And so, yeah, it was a good partnership for you to strike up with for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, it was like completely like it was a very natural kind of relationship, and they solved every single one of the storage challenges that we had literally overnight.
That's awesome.
And their vision, like with the on our end, it was like I felt like we were really visionary on a lot of the cloud services, and I think that we still are.
Yep.
But for them, it was like they were like 10 years ahead of everything, right?
Mm,
Like we were like 5 years ahead, they were 10 years ahead. So
yeah.
it was really awesome. And they've been really supportive of us. Like yeah, when we made our move into India, we were again their first customer in that market. So it was like we did a lot of the company that we keep is really
Yeah.
meaningful and a part
I,
of our core
I want to
principles.
quickly talk about that because I think that is, I mean, we're quickly running out of time, but I want to talk about India because then you're a global footprint, right? So what made you go to India? Apart from the obvious, it's a growing region, expanding, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I saw I worked very closely with a brilliant systems engineer at the time, Muhammad Ali, and I developed a 10-year relationship with this guy, and he was from South India, and I never met a mind like his before, and I was just like working with him was just like a waltz, right? Like just a beautiful dance,
Interesting.
and he saw like he handled a lot of he did a lot of work on storage systems, and he did a lot of work on backup systems, and he was just a fantastic Microsoft architect, and he worked for us for a long time. And I said, hey, I really see a lot of opportunity in India, but I would never like I'm not comfortable with really opening up a business or expanding into that area. Just because I'm President Gringo, I'm like, I'm sitting here in Detroit. I've got no idea what's going on over there, right? Like, and I have no idea if like I just see the market potential, like I see the need, and I go I go if we expand our business into that area, like would you be willing to run it? And he was like, absolutely. And
Wow.
I was so
Okay.
surprised because I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
And within a very short period of time, he went from contractor to employee and now owner. I mean, it was like such a
Wow.
success story for this guy. And a lot of our journey into India was really just exactly the same kind of stuff that we did and innovated on the US side.
That's awesome.
Desktop as a service, pivoted into backup as a service,
Yep.
and Flash that cloud became a thing, right? And we were the pioneers there. And Beam service provider, like we are the back end people that support enterprise IT. Like if you're an IT manager and you're looking to try to find a pathway to the cloud or to journey into the cloud or to, you know, put the proper workload in the right location and
Yep.
secure it, right? Like we're that company. Like we cement ourselves because of our level of domain specialty, and we fit very nicely in that kind of arrangement. For for enterprise IT, they leverage us for our expertise in our cloud and our cloud knowledge, and we're very good at those things. And on the service provider side, the managed service provider side, provide products for them to sell and to incorporate into their stack as well. So Flash Stack has been wonderful for us, and we are all excellent at the very specific discipline and area that we do at UBX Cloud, and that is brought into the India market, and that expertise comes with it. And when we got there, it was like, you guys got to throw out all this bad legacy, like juju stuff you got going on here. Like all this is not going to help you when you're ransomware, when you're hacked.
Yeah,
Have you tested a backup? Your server is like 100 years old. Like having these conversations, and now, like, we've been 5 years in that market, I think almost six now, and it's the same. Like I said, it's the exact same as the U.S. market was early on.
that's
So,
awesome. Let's actually carry on with that, because let's talk about the evolution of, you know, you've mentioned Veeam as a partner. Thank you very much for that. Obviously, but building a service on there and putting a lot of effort into that backup as a service tech, and what that means and what it means to customers, but also how that's evolved into cyber and a generalized, holistic approach to solving a problem today, which is increased, cyber attacks, malware, crypto, ransomware, whatever it might be. So how I know you've got some very specific thoughts around the evolution there. So spend a couple of minutes talking about that and how UBX have had to become experts in this field to help the
yeah,
customers, and what with the technology stack that you've got as well.
that's a really good point. I mean, we being we're not a public cloud provider. We're not providing you just utility, right? We're providing you our flash stack and our experts, right? So that's kind of the differentiator there. And back in 2016, we were handling a lot of our Veeam customers, their backups, their backup and their DR, and a lot of the business continuity components of the Veeam service provider environment, which we managed. And you know, two of our largest customers, or our largest MSPs, got hit by the Kaseya ransomware attack. They weaponized the Kaseya. They used the RMM tool for the first time. Like, this was the
Mm.
first time that this has happened.
I remember that
Um,
one.
yeah, and I'm like on Reddit, like, oh my God, like, is anyone seeing this? We've got like thousands of clients with thousands of servers being encrypted, and like it's all happening all at the same time. Like, how is this even possible? Like, all over the planet. And this was a success story for us and for Veeam, because 80% of those impacted servers that were encrypted, physical, virtual, whatever, they were using our UBX's Cloud Connect. They were using our environment, and we restored them into full operation in like no time. And we were
Mm.
amazed at how fast everything was. We were doing cloud restores faster than the MSP could do local restores, and that like blew my mind, and that blew
Yeah.
all of our minds. And those were like probably the hardest few weeks, just helping that customer and helping them come out of it. I was, I'm on site, I'm taking calls on behalf of the MSP, and I'm assuring their customers that everything's going to be okay, right? Like, everything's fine. Like, we're good.
Yeah. Pretty
And
serious situation, but coming out on the right side of it because of the tech stack and the processes and the architecture that you guys have put into place as well.
yeah, and you never anticipate a scenario in which all of your customers are calling you at the same
Yeah,
time,
that's
right?
worst case, right? That's like, yeah,
That's
that's
worst
that's
case.
I would
And
have packed my bags, Fiji, there you go, done.
and that's the thing though too, is that we were so specialized, and we knew, like, Veeam is the tool in our toolbox that never let us down. I mean, honestly, that's it. It's like the Swiss Army knife that when you like wave it over the box and say, okay, what is this server, or what is this backup? It's going to show you the tools that you need to recover it, right? It's not just going to leave you another box that you've got to unpack and put it away. So that Swiss Army knife, and that technology is what helped us recover all these environments. And we have so many stories like this. It's
Yeah.
actually like, I probably forgot more that we recovered,
Yeah.
than I can remember at this point. But that was a big one. And we have a history of using Veeam for like a lot of off-shelf uses for like emergency migrations, ransomware attacks, and the customer needs to get the environment out of there, right? Or recover the environment. And it's always been that, like, that trusty tool. And the thought, the engineering, the evolution of the product, and it's just been hand in hand. It's incredible, and
It's
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 been such a
funny,
part.
yeah. sorry to interrupt. I was
No,
saying,
you're fine.
just saying, it's funny that I kind of don't probably appreciate that as much as I used to, being on this side of the fence. Like
Mhm.
when I was on the other side of the fence, I remember, being amazed. Like, oh, thank God we've got. I remember, being cryptoed a couple of times, or customer being cryptoed a couple of times, and they've got a 4 terabyte VM, but we're doing an instant recovery of the machine, getting it up and running, and at least they've got their servers back up and running because of the technology. And I used to appreciate a lot more, I think, than what I do now, because I'm not. It's not impacting me in the same way that it used to. Though I love hearing the stories about that, and it almost makes me slightly wish, not really, but slightly wishes that maybe I get back into that side of the game and get that feeling that I had of just
Mhm.
knowing that we're going to be okay, because
Yeah.
we've architected, and not just I'm not just talking about talking about the Veeam point of view, but I'm talking about architecting everything and knowing that we've got the Cisco UCS, the pure storage, the flash, the networking's in play. Everything that we've built and architected gets us to the point where we can go to a customer and say, we can recover you with confidence, and hey, don't worry. Like that's what you want. And when you're offering a service and building a business around this is what you want to have confidence in. So yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. It's really interesting and great to hear it as well.
Absolutely. And when you mention like the flash stack, the resiliency with that part of the stack as well, like the backup is one thing, but the production environment is another.
Yeah.
Um, Pure Storage was, we have the data immutability feature on snapshots. Like, good luck deleting the snapshots, right? There's all these hooks and technologies on the storage end that are completely independent of the backup side, but still serve the purpose of that. Let's
Yep.
make sure that things don't get destroyed.
The whole
And
approach.
yeah, the entire holistic approach. And on the Veeam side, leveraging all that goodness, and you're right, like the Wild West aspect of it. Like, I remember we called Veeam support up, and those crazy Russians on the other end back then were like, hey, can we restore a 250 terabyte physical machine into VMware Cloud over the wire? And
Yeah.
the guy's like, let me check, hold on. And he comes back and he's like, you try to restore it and you let us know. I'm not even joking. Like that, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll try it. Because like that, we were validating if we could. And you want to know what? We
Yeah.
did it.
No, that's
We did a
awesome.
P to V, physical to virtual conversion over the wire during a storage fabric failure on the client end. So their
Yeah.
entire storage fabric was just falling apart. The company, this is another long story, but the company went out of business and they told their customers to leave, and they had 150,000 servers. So
Yeah.
we were evacuating all this customer's
Wow.
environment, these poor clients that were just stuck there. And we did that. That was like the biggest VM we ever P2V'd in my.
That's a massive VM as well, just quietly.
Yeah, I have the screenshot. I've got to find the screenshot because I was
Oh
like, okay.
yeah, that's one of those cool things, right?
Yeah.
Hey, just to finish off, speaking of VMware and speaking of VMs,
Yeah.
just want to quickly, like in 5 minutes, just like chat about the VMware scenario with Broadcom and how that's impacting you from the point of view of obviously I believe you play a couple of sides of the fence with regards to what you offer in terms of VMware licensing and then your own licensing. So in a very quick nutshell, what is it meaning to you? Has it impacted, and what's the reality for customers moving forward?
I think that it's definitely a strange situation for a lot of people out there, and just kind of like, okay, like this is a product that we've used since I was like, like 15 years old, right? Like it's like, so it's like very near and dear to us. And because of the ownership change, and because of the changes in the atmosphere, I still feel that that there's still a lot there, especially on the enterprise side with VMware. And even though UBX Cloud, it's funny, I mentioned like, we're like a mullet, right? Like party in the back, and the business in the front. But like, we do a lot of our labbing on OpenStack, and we have OpenStack experts on staff, and we could very easily, create an enormous OpenStack
Yeah,
cloud. But really, it's like, well, who are our customers? Well, our customers are large enterprise, right? And our customers are like, look, um, this technology, single pane, it works awesome. There's no reason to leave it, right? Just because there's a little bump in the road here and there. Overall, I think it'll just kind of even itself out. And from our side of the fence, it's like, okay, well, they're saying, well, now they're all gonna rush to the public cloud. I'm like, hey, we're here, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
We've
Yep.
got a VMware private cloud and it's flash stack and it's awesome and it's managed by experts. And hey, guess what? We're like a lot cheaper and we care, right? So it's like, so there's the value proposition there. And, I mean, yeah, we could deliver an OpenStack cloud that would do a lot of amazing things, but, you know, um, there's no reason to change, especially when you have larger enterprise clients that are not willing to make that shift.
Yeah.
So let Broadcom get comfortable in their new position and, let them kind of assess the situation. And I think it'll be okay.
Yeah. Do you think that customers and tenants of VMware cloud service
Mhm.
providers have potentially been paying for a super premium, super reliable product on the cheap a little bit maybe for the last 10 years? I've been trying to quantify
Yeah.
this in my head. Maybe there's a bit of a normalization of what you're actually getting from the point of view of the product. And now there's a real tangible example to play it against, which is the public cloud, because repatriation is a thing and was a thing and still is a thing because primarily I think of cost pressures, right? So it's super expensive compared to what the private cloud was or the infrastructure cloud was. So could we just be normalizing that to a certain extent, like you mentioned, not completely going the way of the public cloud cost or the hyperscaler cost, and kind of landing somewhere in the middle, and enterprises understanding and tenants understanding that it's actually okay. Like I'm comfortable here because the alternative is probably something that, yeah, cheaper, whatever, but maybe less reliable, less tangible for my business to be a going concern. Because if something goes wrong, do I really want to trust that technology? And I'm not slagging the other technology that's out there completely, because I've had some on the show the last couple of episodes, right? But I think, do you see that as being a potential outcome here, that there's a bit of normalization of the cost here?
I think the come to Jesus and the reality check is really important there when it comes to that. And I think you nailed it. We've all been using this technology and it's so excellent and so good, but there's so much legacy pricing models. VMware was very much like, it's okay, but in reality, Broadcom is kind of injecting that like, hey, there's a reason why everyone is using this. You want uptime, you want resiliency, stick with this, and you're okay to pay for it because you want that 100% uptime,
Yeah.
or that high uptime. And I think that, like you mentioned, the other options that are out there, they're all fine. I mean,
Yeah.
really, it is, but you got to look at it from the lens of the customer,
Yeah.
and what's important to them, and is like VDI is a huge thing for us. So it's like, look, we're invested in desktop as a service, and using those products and using those hypervisors. There's a reason why we're using them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, good stuff. Hey, finally, just in a minute or so, what's next for UBX? What's the next things that you're looking at to sort of innovate on and sort of bring to market?
Our like I said, we begrudgingly got into cyber in 2016, but we've really helped and contributed to a lot of positive outcomes for customers who are victims of cyber attacks, need to recover from cyber attacks, and just looking for a place where they can walk into the UBX house and open the door and they're like, I'm safe, right? We have Veeam, we have Pure Storage, we have experts, like come in, like we'll take care of you. Here's hot cocoa, right?
Yeah.
And cookies.
And
And
cookies. Good.
any cookie. Oh yeah, cookies are a big thing. If you go
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
YouTube, search for UBX cookies, you'll see it. You'll
Oh,
see my
okay.
logo.
I'm going to do that now. I'll link
Yeah,
to it.
yeah. And that's her back there, actually. That's our baker extraordinaire.
There
So
you
she
go.
bakes. Um, and it's just uh, it's it's very much the having the best in class engineers and kind of very much doing what we do well, and expanding our cloud offerings. We've got a lot of exciting news in 2024 regarding our expansion into India even more, and cementing that investment. And then also into new areas like the UAE, like the Gulf
Oh,
region.
wow.
Like
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
we see that cybersecurity, business continuity, and private cloud are like, they're really in hot demand there, and the experts to run it. So
Beautiful.
I'm excited. I mean, I get that same like glycol data center feeling that I get now. I'm actually like,
I love that
I'm
tie back.
going to
I
feel
love
it
the tie
again.
back. Good, good. Great way to end. Hey, this has been a really great conversation. And like I say a few times, but I mean it here, we could have talked for hours. So thanks a lot, Steve, for being on. Just as a final reminder, if you like great things with great tech, head to the YouTube channel, head to the website, gtwgt.com or at GTwGT podcast. This has been episode 80 of Great Things with Great Tech. Thanks again to UBX Cloud for being on.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Appreciate it.